Kunja Bihari
Jaya Ramadava Kunja Bihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vratajanarandana Yashodanandana Vratajanarandana Yamanatira Vanachati Yamanatira Vanachati Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari Yasaranandana Vrajajanarandana Yasaranandana Vrajajanarandana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Prabhupada ki jai. Which text? Do you have an idea?
Upananda. Yes.
What's the text number, please?
We should be at chapter 9 verse 1.
Chapter 9, verse 1. That's a nice verse. That's a nice verse. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, Please chant along responsively. Shri Bhagavan Vacha. Idam tu te guyatamam. Pravaksham yanasuyave. Jnanam vijnana sahitam. Yajgyatva mokshase shubhat. Idam tu te guyatamam. Pravaksham yanasuyave. Jnanam vijnanam sahitam. Yajgyatva mokshase shubhat.
Idam tu te guyatamam.
Idam tu te guyatamam.
Prakshayami anusuyatve.
Prabhaksham yanasuyave.
Jnanam vijnanam sahitam. Yajgyatva mokshaye ashubhat.
Sri Bhagavan Vacha.
Sri Bhagavan Vacha.
Idam tu te gudya atmanamam.
Idam tu te guyatamam.
Vakshami anusuyave.
Prabhaksham yanasuyave.
Jnanam vijnanam sahitam.
Jnanam vijnana sahitam.
Yajgyantva mokshase subhat.
Yajgyatva mokshase shubhat. Are you going to chant the verse? No, behind you. No.
Idam tu te gudya
Yeah.
tamam prakshayami anasuyave.
Prabhaksham yanasuyave.
Jnanam vijnanam sahitam.
Jnanam vijnana sahitam.
Yajgyantva mokshaye subhat.
Yajgyatva. Ladies, please chant.
Ladies.
Idam tu te guyatamam.
Idam tu te guyatamam.
Pravakshami anasuyave.
Prabhaksham yanasuyave.
Jnanam vijnanam sahitam.
Jnanam vijnana sahitam.
Yajgyatva mokshase subhat.
Yajgyatva mokshase shubhat.
Idam tu te guyatamam.
Idam tu te guyatamam.
Pravakshami anasuyave.
Prabhaksham yanasuyave.
Jnanam vijnanam sahitam.
Jnanam vijnana sahitam.
Yajgyatva mokshase subhat.
Yajgyatva mokshase shubhat. Rishta.
Shri Bhagavan Vacha.
Shri Bhagavan Vacha.
Idam tu te guhyatamam.
Idam tu te guyatamam.
Pravaksham yanasuyave.
Pravaksham yanasuyave.
Jnanam vijnana sahitam.
Jnanam vijnana sahitam.
Yajgyatva mokshase shubhat.
Yajgyatva mokshase shubhat. Shri Bhagavan Vacha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said. Idam, this, tu, but, te, unto you, guya tamam, the most confidential, pravakshami, I am speaking, anasuyave, to the non-envious, jnanam, knowledge, vijnana, realized knowledge, sahitam, with, yat, which, gyatva, knowing, mokshase, you will be released. Ashubhat, from the miserable material existence. The Supreme Personality Godhead said, "My dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most confidential knowledge and realization, knowing which you shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence." Purport. As a devotee hears more and more about the Supreme Lord, he becomes enlightened. This hearing process is recommended in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Quote, "The messages of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are full of potencies, and these potencies can be realized if topics regarding the Supreme Godhead are discussed amongst devotees. This cannot be achieved by the association of mental speculators or academic scholars, for it is realized knowledge." Paragraph. The devotees are constantly engaged in the Supreme Lord's service. The Lord understands the mentality and sincerity of a particular living entity who is engaged in Krishna consciousness and gives him the intelligence to understand the science of Krishna in the association of devotees. Discussion of Krishna is very potent, and if a fortunate person has such association and tries to assimilate the knowledge, then he will surely make advancement toward spiritual realization. Lord Krishna, in order to encourage Arjuna to higher and higher elevation in his potent service, describes in this 9th chapter matters more confidential than he has already disclosed. Now comes a little summary. The very beginning of Bhagavad Gita, the 1st chapter, is more or less an introduction to the rest of the book. And in the 2nd and 3rd chapters, the spiritual knowledge described is called confidential. Topics discussed in the 7th and 8th chapters are specifically related to devotional service, and because they bring enlightenment in Krishna consciousness, they are called more confidential. But the matters which are described in the 9th chapter deal with unalloyed pure devotion. Therefore, this is called the most confidential. One who is situated in the most confidential knowledge of Krishna is naturally transcendental. He therefore has no material pangs, although he is in the material world. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it is said that although one who has a sincere desire to render loving service to the Supreme Lord is situated in the conditional state of material existence, he is to be considered liberated. Prabhus, you're all liberated. Similarly, we shall find in the Bhagavad Gita, 10th chapter, that anyone who is engaged in that way is a liberated person. Paragraph. Now, this first verse has specific significance. The word idam jnanam, this knowledge, refers to pure devotional service, which consists of 9 different activities: hearing, chanting, remembering, serving, worshiping, praying, obeying, maintaining friendship, and surrendering everything. By the practice of these 9 elements of devotional service, one is elevated to spiritual consciousness, Krishna consciousness. When one's heart is thus cleared of material contamination, one can understand this science of Krishna. Simply to understand that a living entity is not material is not sufficient. That may be the beginning of spiritual realization, but one should recognize the difference between the activities of the body and the spiritual activities of one who understands he is not the body. Interesting way to say it. Paragraph. In the 7th chapter, we've already discussed the opulent potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, His different energies, the inferior and superior natures, and all this material manifestation. Now in the 9th chapter 9, the glories of the Lord will be delineated. And the last paragraph. The Sanskrit word anasuyave, now it got loud, what happened? Anasuyave got loud. Must be an important word. And this verse is also very significant. Generally, the commentators, even if they are highly scholarly, are all envious of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even the most erudite scholars write on Bhagavad Gita very inaccurately because they are envious of Krishna. Their commentaries are useless. The commentaries given by devotees of the Lord are bona fide. No one can explain Bhagavad Gita or give perfect knowledge of Krishna if he is envious. One who criticizes the character of Krishna without knowing him is a fool. So, such commentaries should be very carefully avoided for one who understands that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the pure and transcendental personality. These chapters will be very beneficial. Several points of emphasis are made in the purport and are part of the context of the bhakti process. Let's go back to chapter 7. Chapter 7 begins with Krishna saying this topmost yoga system that I described from the end, the last verse of chapter 6, I am now going to explain. And he uses the phrase tat shrinu, hear from me. And in this verse he says pravakshami, I'm going to explain. Emphasis is on the hearing process. Tat shrinu pravakshami. The way of Bhagavad Gita's being accessed is the hearing and chanting process from the proper source. In Krishna's, you can't get better source. Proper source. Krishna, or the disciplic succession from Krishna, is the proper source. And it's through that hearing process that bhakti becomes awakened, and when bhakti becomes awakened, then the clearing process commences and proceeds, and as the clearing process proceeds, then one can understand. So the understanding is through the agency of bhakti, not scholarship. That's emphasis in the purport. There are scholars, and they write lofty, languaged commentary. Well, there's different ways of describing. Here he said they're useless, and another is misleading, and the other is rascal, and taking Krishna's words, and on the authority of Krishna says, they say they're ideas. That's called cheating. So they don't get, one will not get the understanding that way. It's not by this ascending process, it's by the descending process through tat shrinu and pravakshami, by the hearing process from Krishna or through disciplic succession. very important. Is say it forwards and backwards in so many ways. It's very important. Then there's some other qualitative qualification that a receiver has to have. We're the receiver. And that is to Anasuya. It's a very popular girl's name in India. Anasuya. Means non-envious. That's a nice name. And it's a nice quality. Because even if one hears from the right source, which is hard to find the right source, but even if one hears from the right source and one is envious, one isn't going to understand. That's restated text 3, coming attractions. Those who are not faithful, that's Shraddha. Here it's Anasuya, non-envious. Shraddha is faithful. So they're not one-to-one, but they're connected. If you're envious, you certainly don't have faith. You're a competitor of Krishna. And so how's that being faithful? Or faithful to the disciplic succession of Krishna. And if one is envious, then one isn't going to be faithful. So they're disqualifiers. Faithlessness and enviousness, they're disqualifiers. Even hearing from the right source. And Krishna is the right source. Okay, then, Krishna is the right source, and Bhagavad Gita has endured for so many thousands of years. Therefore, it's an important text. How do we know which is the right message? This was a question John Lennon asked Srila Prabhupada multiple times during some recorded exchange between them. Yoko Ono was also there, and others were there, but mainly it was those two that were asking the questions. And he asked it 4 different times. I accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And I accept Bhagavad Gita are the words of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But what makes your translation of Bhagavad Gita best? And you ask anybody, and they say mine's the best, and he'll say mine's the best, and he'll say mine's the best. So how am I supposed to know which one of them is the best? Because there are so many making similar claim. Prabhupada gave this explanation of disciplic succession, and then one of the answers that he said it very strongly, is you find somebody that is always, the qualifications of one who is devoted to Krishna. They're always thinking of Krishna, they're always serving Krishna. Their whole life is Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. That person is going to know Krishna. It's kind of, if you're totally absorbed in someone, a family member or a friend or something, it's just like your whole existence is absorbed in that family member or friend or whatever, you're going to understand things about that person, and they're going to disclose things to you that they don't disclose to other people. Other people won't even have a clue about. But because of that intimate connection with the person, you'll understand the person. And that person who understands Krishna can explain Krishna's words in disciplic succession. There's this nice section in Canto 1, Chapter 9, Bhagavatam, where Bhishma Dev is consoling Maharaj Yudhisthira. In our back row back there. Do you know who those personalities are? next to Christine. I don't know your name. Yeah.
No.
You know who Bhishma Dev is?
No.
No. A little background. You know what Bhagavad Gita is?
Yes.
Yes. And the person who is receiving Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is speaking, the person receiving is Arjuna. Arjuna is one of 5 brothers, and Arjuna is particularly dear to Krishna, and he's like a superhero. He's a superhero. Valorous like nobody. He's in a category of his own. Those 5 brothers had the same father, and when they were very young, their father died. So grandfather took care of them. His name was Bhishma. Grandfather Bhishma. And when grandfather Bhishma, so after Bhagavad Gita is spoken, Arjuna and there was a big war, and the 5 brothers came out victorious. The eldest of those 5 brothers became the emperor. I mean, it's a long story. Before the battle, Krishna went to the other side and said, you know what? What? These 5 brothers, they're entitled to the throne by law of mankind. But you know what? You be the king. You be the... They'll be subordinate to you. Just give them 5 states to rule. They'll answer to you. You're the emperor, and they're just like ruling 5 states. No. Give them 5 cities. No. Give them 5 villages. No. I can't live on this planet with those 5 brothers. There will be war. It's them or me. And it was like there was this whole scene. So there was a war. They were just give the kingdom, take it, but they have to maintain, because those who are by nature in Vedic culture, they're protectors. They have to have some territory to protect, and they can be subservient to someone or over someone else, but that's their duty and that's their maintenance. No. It's them or me. Fight to the end. So the Pandavas were victorious. The 5 brothers. And grandfather Bhishma, their grandfather, the one that raised them like a father and taught them so many things throughout their whole growing up, who they looked up to and loved very much, is out on the battlefield, lying in a bed of arrows. And the elder brother who became the emperor, he feels terrible. I'm the emperor, and so many people died so I can be the emperor. And grandfather Bhishma is out lying on the battlefield. I feel horrible. So a decision was made. Let's go hear from grandfather Bhishma. He is one of the greatest authorities of ever. And let's hear from him how to handle this negative emotion. He's very wise and very, kind. And we have all trust and respect and regard for him. So off they went, not just the 5 brothers and Krishna, but so many sages, and there's a cast of thousands. Make a wonderful movie. And they all came, sages and kings and this ones and that ones, of luminaries, very special, powerful people, and all their followers, to hear grandfather Bhishma speak. And he says many things, but he starts off saying here he is, with his body is riddled with arrows, and says, Yudhisthira, you and your brothers and your mother, so many tribulations you had to undergo. An ordinary person would never have been able to even survive. Now here he is with arrows in his body. Would have never been able to survive, but you were always protected by your virtue, by your submission to the elevated brahmanas, and by Krishna here. And I worship Krishna, he is the supreme, etc., etc. Then he says, you think of Krishna as a friend, or your cousin, because by family relation he was cousin, or this way, that way. But you know what? He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And who can understand his plan? You didn't want to do the battle, but Krishna indicated he wanted the battle. You know why? Because he wanted you to be the king. And this other group of people, they were bad people. He wanted them to be out. He didn't want to leave the planet with them running around trying to rule the world. He wanted, so it was Krishna's plan. And who can understand Krishna's plan? He said, the most learned sages and this one and that one, they can't understand. So don't try to understand. Then he says, it comes right back to what this text says. There's some persons, and he names two, Narada Muni and Lord Shiva, and a few others. To some degree, they understand his activities, but they don't understand his plan. So, Yudhisthira, there's a plan. And you're the emperor. And there are people waiting for you to protect them. That's your duty. That's what Krishna wanted. Do your duty. Give protection to the people that Krishna wants you to be the protector of. And if you want, I'll explain to you how to do your duty. So he asks him how to do his duty. But the point is, to understand Krishna is very special. It's not possible by scholarship, because in that assembly there were so many scholars, very vastly learned people, and they didn't understand Krishna. Because of their scholarship, that didn't entitle them to understand Krishna. But through devotion, one can understand Krishna to some degree, whatever Krishna reveals. So, we just know, going back to this little summary, chapter 1, setting the scene. Bhagavad Gita is about the battle is about to begin. Arjuna says all these virtuous reasons why he doesn't want to fight. Krishna says, you're speaking as if you're a virtuous, learned person, but you have some basic misunderstandings, Arjuna. And then Arjuna, so chapter 2 and 3 is, you're not the body. If you want to know what your duty is, before you talk about what your duty is, let's try to understand who you are, and then we'll talk about what your duty is, and you're not the body. So what's the duty in this world if you're not this body? Was to perform activities with sacrifice to the Supreme. By karma yoga, you render sacrifice to the Supreme, the results of your work. Then Prabhupada summarizes here in chapters 7 and 8, because this is chapter 9, first verse. In the 7th chapter, we have already discussed the opulent potency of the Supreme Person, his different energies, the inferior, superior nature, and all this cosmic manifestation, which is the combination of the two. Now we're going to hear glories of Krishna. And so it's do, 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 do. If you're envious, you're not going to understand it. Do, 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 do. And then later, without being faithful, you won't understand it. That's text 3. So there's some qualification that to some degree we can understand it. We can understand Krishna through the medium of non-envious or for the satisfaction of Krishna activity. Whatever that is. We eat. Everybody eats. We sleep. We do some work. We do certain things. We take a bath. We do things regularly. And one who does those regular things looks like what everybody else is doing, but those that do those things in the consciousness that this is for the pleasure of Krishna. Or even reducing it to something more preliminary. Under the order of the spiritual master. This is the way that I was trained as a new devotee. You get up in the morning at whatever o'clock. For us it was 3:30. Why are you getting up at 3:30? This is the short answer is because it's the teaching of Srila Prabhupada. We rise early to attend Mangal Arti. Okay, to go and shower, putting on tilak. Why am I putting on this stuff on my forehead? Under the instruction of my spiritual master, putting on my dhoti. Why? Under the instruction of my spiritual master. The instructions of the spiritual master are to assist us to come. It's not a dhoti or not a dhoti is not the essence, but it's something that will help us remember Krishna and remind others of Krishna, the tilak and the dhoti and the shaved head and the whole thing. And run downstairs and get ready for Mangal Arti. So why am I doing this? And when the curtain opens, we pay obeisances. Why am I doing this? Not just, there's rituals. So I was visiting, before I was here in New York, I was visiting in upstate New York. And it's, in the area east of Albany, that part of New York State, along the Taconic and the east side of the Hudson River, a number of places. It's a very interesting group of people up there. They have some spirituality and they don't know too much about bhakti, but they have some kind of, they're inclined to bhakti. So one of the devotees was sharing with me, one of their friends is a Presbyterian minister that conducts regular gatherings where it's, I forget what it's called, but they appreciate rituals of other groups. So when it's Hare Krishna time, it's the ritual of Krishna Janmashtami. And they just, everybody gets in there and does Krishna Janmashtami. They're from the Presbyterian Church and they're from the whatever it is, and because so we have our rituals. We can they look at, the tilak and dhoti and ringing the bells and deity worship and paying obeisances and all those things as rituals. And if we just do rituals ourselves, that's interesting, but it's not the essence. The essence is not the behavior or the ritual. The essence is the consciousness behind it. That's the essence. So the consciousness behind it is to be in our relationship with Krishna. And if you're so back to this, those who are in their relationship with Krishna and are not envious of Krishna, they're actually they're not just doing behaviors, but are want to be in their relationship with Krishna, they're cultivating that consciousness. To some degree, they can understand Krishna. So in this 9th chapter, the glories of Krishna are being revealed by Krishna. And the envious persons, they don't get it. They cannot get it because you can't enter to that territory unless you have the password. The password is being non-envious. Okay, come on in. Non-envious can mean, I know that I don't know, and I know that I want to know. So please let me hear about that which I do not know, but I want to know. I don't have to believe it, like close my eyes and just say I believe it, and now I'm saved or something. It's just the inquisitive spirit wanting to know and hearing from the right source, and then a little light goes on. Use something we can understand because of that non-envious nature of hearing from the right source. And it's a little bit. We're tiny, and we're conditioned. But the conditioning that's right in the purport, it can be removed by that process of Tatchanu or Pravakshami, by hearing Krishna speaking. It's a really nice way to read Bhagavad Gita. When you read Bhagavad Gita from our childhood academic training, what's the information here? And then we try to zero in on the information, so when somebody asks us, we can say the information, get a pat on the back, and say, you got a A in your exam. You know the information. But a better way to read, and the proper way to read, is Krishna is speaking. Read Bhagavad Gita that way. Before you open Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is speaking to me. What is it that he would like me to receive from him as he's speaking? He's speaking to everyone, but you're part of everyone. He's speaking to you. It's very personal. Read in that way. Cultivate reading in that way, and you'll find reading Bhagavad Gita as a whole other experience. You may or may not get an A in the exam that says you this and that, the high school type of exams, but your understanding of what Krishna wants to give to you, the conditioned soul, a heart that's pure, and in that pure heart, someone that can understand him and be situated in your loving exchange with him. That's what Krishna wants. And he's giving us the roadmap, how to do that. And there's no glitches in the system. It's flawless. I'm making that remark because traveling from upstate to New Jersey took an extra hour and a half because GPS was telling us, go to such and such, take an exit, turn around and go back up from the same place where you came, exit, turn around and go back down where you went, turn around, go back out, and we went around a loop and said, we did it a few times, and it was heavy traffic. We thought maybe it's rerouting us because of heavy traffic. But there was a glitch in the system. So we, shut off our GPS and figured out how to get to where we want to go. We got there. There's no glitch in the system. There's something there's obstacles or blocks in the heart. That's not the system. It's meant to help us become free from those things. And the procedure, same as the starting point, is through the hearing process. That's how it starts. The hearing process makes some cleansing. Even we hear with a mind that's colored by our conditioning. That's given. We're going to hear with a colored mind that's conditioned by guna and karma, modes of nature and our past activity, and here comes light that's filtered because the mind is conditioned. But the sound vibration is so powerful it cleanses that conditioning. And then you keep hearing, and you get a clearer picture of what the message is, especially if you're listening from the heart. Instead of, the information processor. Hear from the heart, cleanse the mind, the heart, and then that spirit of bhakti that's innate becomes awakened, and then you can start to understand the message. Start to understand Krishna through that awakened bhakti that has become not only awakened but somewhat matured, at least little by little matured and developed, and for Krishna's pleasure, and then we can understand things that we couldn't understand before, just from reading the same book. It's not an information book, it's a devotional book. And it acts in a devotional way for those who are non-envious. And then we can start to understand more about Krishna. Going back to the 4th chapter, you understand about Krishna, no more birth. Now let's go to this little paragraph and we'll end. This little paragraph that says, Prabhu, you're already liberated. I feel pretty conditioned, I don't know about you, but we're already liberated. So what does that mean? In Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, this is middle of the page. In Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu it is said that although one who has a sincere desire to render loving service to the Supreme Lord is situated in the conditional state of material existence, he is to be considered liberated. Similarly, we shall find in the Bhagavad Gita, 10th chapter, that anyone who is engaged in that way is a liberated person. So what does that mean? Well, supposing I stick my hand in an electric socket. I'm not going to do that, but supposing I did that, and you come along and shake my hand, you're going to get an electric shock, because this body connected to the electric outlet is carrying electricity. Although I'm not electricity, the body isn't electricity, it's conducting electricity, and the person who touches gets a shock, the transmission of that electricity. Similarly, the process of bhakti, this is Rupa Goswami's teaching, the process of bhakti is from the spiritual platform. Bhakti is from the spiritual platform. And my consciousness may not be pure and fully spiritual, not maybe. We're living entities that are in our state, we're not in pure consciousness. But to engage in bhakti, which is by descending mercy, not by some other qualification, then we become moved to that spiritual platform. And it's bhakti, say it, same thing in a different way. When the sun comes in contact with something that's impure, does this, A, the sun becomes impure? No. B, the place that's impure becomes purified by contact with the sun? B. So we're in that category. We're in contact with devotional service. So we're not pure fully yet, but we're becoming purified by contacting that which is pure, because bhakti is pure. Although my consciousness is I'm in the modes of nature. So the soul is on the liberated platform and consciousness isn't there yet. There's a gap. The consciousness gap. So Krishna consciousness means to cultivate Krishna consciousness while we're staying in connection with the medium of bhakti. It's not just the behaviors. The medium of bhakti is not just behaviors. Somebody that's a dodo can ring a bell and wave some incense stick and they're not in bhakti. But if we do that, put on the do the behaviors with the sense of being connected to Krishna and representatives of Krishna, that soul is connected to the liberated platform, and consciousness incrementally will move to the purified stage. So the gap is reduced by the bhakti process. But even in the conditioned state, it's liberated. Say the same thing in a very different way. Same thing. The topics of Bhagavad Gita are bhakti, and bhakti is pure. So there's stages. Practice, sadhana bhakti. Spontaneous bhakti, bhava bhakti. Pure love of God, prema bhakti. So even in the practicing stage, it's also bhakti. And to do bhakti, it's from the liberated platform, because bhakti is from the liberated platform. Even you're practicing, your consciousness is not free from all material contamination. You're on the liberated platform. Just don't stop bhakti. Say the same thing in another way. Same thing. Multiple choice question. A tulsi is A seed. B, the seed, once the seed sprouts and there's a little shoot that comes out, that's a tulsi. C, tulsi is after a little shoot comes out, 2 little leaves come out, that's a tulsi. D, tulsi is when you not just a sprout and 2 little leaves, but it's a full plant and there's many leaves. And then E, not just when there's many leaves, but then there's flowers on the tulsi plant. And then one more is not just flowers, but the flowers produce some seeds. And then the last one is all of the above. That's all tulsi. They're all tulsi. Just at different stages. So we may be at the not yet purified state. Not maybe. We're at the not yet purified stage. And we have our, struggles. From time to time, or most of the time, we have our little struggles. But if we stay connected to the bhakti process, then we're in the liberated position. Consciousness isn't purified yet, but stay with the activity, not just the activity, the mood of cultivating a desire to please Krishna with your cooking and your eating and your rising and your waking and your bathing and your thising and your thating. Do those everyday things with the intention that Krishna should be pleased, and the consciousness will be cleansed, and the consciousness gap will become less. You become more Krishna conscious on the liberated platform. But even in the practicing stage, it's on the liberated, that's Bhagavad Gita. And it's the most confidential. That's another term. Most confidential. Goyam means confidential. And Goya Tamaha. Most confidential. Uttama. The topmost confidential knowledge. More confidential than anything said before. And that most confidential is pure devotional service. So Krishna is going to talk about pure devotional service. Rishikeshananda, don't do that. Turn it off. Need help how to turn it off? Do you know how to turn it off? Okay, good. Okay. That's a good place to stop. Any comments on all of this? Chapter 9. Yes?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, in the purport, one should recognize the difference between the activities of the body and the spiritual activities of the one who understands that he is not body. Could you please enlighten?
Sure, it's a difference of consciousness. Over here, here's Prabhupada's example, 2 factory workers. Here's factory worker A, here's factory worker B, and the activities look the same. It's just, on the assembly line in the factory. Looks the same. But the activities of the person who knows he's not the body is on the liberated platform. His consciousness is on the liberated platform, and he's situated on a liberated platform. There's a difference. That's the difference of consciousness. Both are spirit, soul, not the body. Both are doing bodily activity. Consciousness. Okay? Yes?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I was thinking about, there's something that I've been thinking about in concerns with, I think it might be with consciousness. You know, I came from a Christian background, so I can understand that Krishna is in the deities because we serve the deities, but I've been wanting to cultivate a deeper connection with the deities. Like when I see you in Mangalarati, I see you very connected, and other devotees too, and you know, I see them as beautiful, I see them as spiritual, and you know, but I don't have this very
personal connection.
Yes, it's like
it grows.
Like I know that Krishna is in it, and you know, I understand that, but it's not you know, I don't have this. So I'm just wondering what I can do to build that.
Service.
More service.
Serve the deity. Let's take your friend sitting next to you. You know, when you first get to know somebody, you have an idea of who that somebody is. And then you get to know that person more and get to know that person more. Then you start to understand more of who the person really is by, you know, the association together. And they'll understand more about who you really are, not just, you know, the first impression. So, same with the deity. You serve the deity. So that's the position of approach, is in the mood of service, and you start to get a sense of connection through the medium of service. It doesn't happen by some conceptual adjustment. It happened through the medium of exchange.
I thought that maybe, you know, how knowledge is understood through time, how Krishna explains things to you, and one day you just get things. I thought maybe that's how it
but
works.
even when Krishna explains it to you, then something changes. Mm-hmm. Even there's something that changes. Sometimes is like a fast forward, and sometimes it's gradual, and it's up to Krishna. But it's not just like, you know, it's a relationship with Krishna. Otherwise, it remains conceptual only, notional only, and just a little editing on your words. It's not like super critical, but it's not Krishna is within the deity. Krishna is the deity.
Krishna is.
That's not that Krishna is in his name. Krishna is his name. Mm-hmm. The name and Krishna are the same. The form of Krishna and Krishna are the same. The words of Krishna and Krishna are the same. Not that Krishna is within Bhagavad Gita. The message of Bhagavad Gita is Krishna, and Krishna is the message of Bhagavad Gita. Both, you know, both directions. They're identical. Not within. We're the soul within the body, but Krishna doesn't have a body, material body. So this is the language of editing, but it's important. Anything? Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Prabhupada Maharaj ki jai.